So are you ready to create those power of moments? Just like Chip Heath gave us that challenge last year, it still is true to this year. And I want to encourage all of us to say, whatever we take back from this summit, you have the power to take this back and put it into your communities. So again, I want to thank Chip for being a part of that. And we are going to get started with our next presentation in just a moment here. And then after our next presentation, we're going to have a great panel that you're going to actually hear from. It's going to be moderated by Soraya Gage from NBC Learn, and you have Moye, the third, an aeronautical engineer, Greg Muccio from Southwest Airlines, Jeff Huart from the NAACP, and Cheryl Lynn Moderator with the University of Philippines. So I'm going to get off stage and allow them to come on stage and be live. And then we're going to have a lunch break after that. So, or dinner break, where you are in the world. So thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Building an Inclusive STEM Workforce. I'm Soraya Gage from NBC News. I'm General Manager of our education efforts. I'd like to introduce our panel. First of all, Jeff Huart, Huart is from the NAACP. Sheryl Lynn Monterola, Associate Professor, Science Education Division of Curriculum and Instruction, College of Education for the University of Philippines. And Greg Muccio from Southwest Airlines, who's in talent acquisition. Welcome, everybody. We're waiting maybe for Moye, who's an aeronautical engineer, but we will start anyway. So these are strange times, but the interest and the effort to be a more inclusive STEM workforce is still as important, as salient as ever. And perhaps the events of the recent few weeks have actually fueled that, and we'll be talking about that today. But first, I'd like to go around the room and have each person talk about how they got involved in STEM and what their role is in building a Sheryl?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Cheryl Monterola from the University of the Philippines. I'm also the Executive Director of the Center for Integrated STEM Education here in the Philippines, or SYSTEM. It's funded by the UNILAB Foundation, a pharmaceutical company here in the Philippines. Regarding the work of the center, we are involved in engaging senior high school in developing innovative projects, so some of which are actually agri-tech solutions. And then we also have some education response regarding developing STEM literacy among young students. And then also we have micronutrition literacy with senior high school students. Right now, our upcoming project with regards to workforce development has something to do with developing a set of curriculum materials for a possible advanced manufacturing STEM workforce development. But it's a little bit delayed because of the COVID-19 situation. But it's going to start next year.
Okay, thank you, Sheryl. Greg, do you want to talk about what Southwest Airlines is doing in terms of building an inclusive STEM workforce?
Yeah, thanks. So Greg Muccio, I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition at Southwest. Been there, it'll be 19 years in August. And so I lead all the hiring efforts across all disciplines and from any type of workforce development initiatives that we have. So we do a lot of activity both in everything from K through 12 to college internships to apprenticeships, et cetera. And in a non-pandemic year, we're usually hiring 6,000 plus externals and another 2,000 or so internals across a lot of disciplines and across a lot of areas that I would say have influence of STEM and an integrated piece of STEM. It's extremely important, and I think the current situations have highlighted it even more. The ability to not be in silos and to be able to think across disciplines and work groups and so forth to be able to try and solve the problems that we're facing. So Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Jeff Huart, you want to pick up on what Greg said about what is the NAACP doing to build an inclusive STEM workforce, and why is that so important to your organization?
Oh, thank you, and good morning. The NAACP has been here since 1909, and they've been fighting civil rights issues, disparity issues, equity issues all during that time. And education clearly remains a clear focus of this organization, not only here in the United States, but worldwide for all of our children here. The key for them is in terms of equity. That's the big word where, again, many of our Black and brown children do not have the proper equipment. We've been talking about STEM for a number of years, and unless we make sure that our children have the proper technology devices, access to the internet, we'll be back in this conundrum again and again and again. And so, unfortunately, what has recently happened to George Floyd and around the country, people have seen that, again, our teachers do a yeoman's job in terms of what's going on. We've had many parents now wishing their teachers could actually come into their home to work with them, not only on STEM, but all subject matters. So I think what we have to realize now is we have a great opportunity now to bridge this gap, form creative partnerships to move forward in STEM. And in closing, why do I like STEM? My youngest son, Andres, his two favorite subjects are science and math. This year he graduated high school as the high school valedictorian and had the highest GPA in his school of 99.9.
Nice.
So what we're showing is that all of our children can do it if you give them the proper tools and an exciting and make school fun again. Let's do it. Thank you.
That's excellent. So the recent news that's happened, it's very, very, it's kind of changing everything globally in the United States. How has that affected, and I know Jeff just touched on it, but Greg, how has that affected how you're going to approach STEM going forward? Have you had any meetings internally about, reimagining, restructuring your STEM efforts?
Well, we've part of our efforts for a while has been a lot of it to what Jeff mentioned there is about access and exposure. I think I'm just a big believer that, a lot of skills and abilities have been given out equally to individuals. What has not been distributed as equally is access, exposure, opportunity. And so I think that that's really one of the things that we've been really passionate about is how do we reach deeper, reach further, and reach into areas to give students just access, the opportunity to dream about something, to see something, because that's really, I think what we've just seen a lot is just they don't have an exposure to something, so then it's hard to kind of pursue that. And then recently, with just all the activity, from and microscope from George Floyd is, I think a lot of times in corporate America that from a diversity impact as well, that opportunity and exposure can happen inside of organizations or the lack thereof. So it's not that we don't have diverse talent within our organizations, but what is their opportunity? What is their exposure level? So I think that to me is so critical to what we're trying to do.
It's interesting because NBC News, I don't know if you saw, put out our new president wants us to be 50% diverse there's no timeline on it, and 50-50 women and men. But the real challenge is where, there's the talk of it and then there's the execution of it, right? So What specifically can Southwest Airlines do in hiring practices and in, getting that exposure? What are the specifics?
Yeah, I think the thing that has to be, there's not a silver bullet to solve this problem, right? So there's not one thing that's there. And so I think you have to have the things like, that are coming from the top, like your president has done, so that there's issues there. And then, and then there's a groundswell of things. And so, for us, when it comes to sourcing and it comes to the outreach or whatever, I've challenged my team. It's like, okay, we can't do it because it feels good or that you're trying to check a box. You need to make sure that when we're engaging with an organization that we do our due diligence with them to ensure that we really can create a pathway that's all the way through. So I think that's a big piece of it. And then you have to do things that are a checkpoint, right? So one of the things that we're trying to build on is like, hey, we can't just go into a third grade classroom, get a bunch of kids excited, and then we're never seeing and talking to them again. And so we're trying to build different touch points. So kind of, K through 5, then, middle school, then high school, and then even into college or trades or whatever. And what are the various touch points that we can have so that if we've interested a student that we're able to provide information, those sorts of things, resources to them to be able to do that. So I think that's one of the ones where I've just challenged the team. We just have to be a lot more active in what we're doing and a lot more thoughtful in who we're doing it with to ensure that we can get somebody, all the way through into being hired as an employee in whatever role is best suited for them to be successful. So
yeah. Well, you've got a double whammy with STEM because there's already a bit of a stigma around it for young kids. They don't quite get how exciting it is as a career and how fulfilling it can be and how it can be the pathway to their dreams. They turn off. So you have, this stigma that's getting a lot better, plus the lack of exposure. Sheryl, how are you dealing with that?
In the case of the Philippines, only about 15% of senior high school students choose to go through a STEM track in senior high school. So what we're trying to do now is to show that STEM can be ready for solving real world problems. So we have an innovation program in 12 high schools in one of the poorest provinces in the country, and we've seen a pretty good turnout in terms of the projects that they were able to come up with. So we're supposed to have a community STEM expo last March, but because of the COVID-19 situation, we have to redesign the program. So, but at any rate, we were able to have 48 projects that will be evaluated very soon. And then in the case of young students, because here in the Philippines, the formal science curriculum starts in grade 3. There's no formal science curriculum in kinder until grade 2. What we're doing right now is to have a curricular experiment for kinder to grade 2 for STEM literacy. What we have to redesign because of the COVID-19 situation is that we have to send out learning packets for those kids that will participate in the program. Because most kids will not be able to go via online mode. So we have to do that, sending out learning packets for them. And also some COVID-19 comics that will be printed by the Department of Education.
Okay. Jeff, you have a presentation, but I just want you to address what we were talking about with Greg. And really, how do you get the word out? It's great for corporations to talk about wanting to have a more diverse workforce and wanting to, hire people. But in actuality, where are we falling short as a society in making sure that everybody has access to these kinds of jobs and this kind of learning?
Well, I think a number of things is that we must also let a lot of these students know we believe in forming some kind of apprenticeship programs for our students in the high school so they can actually know what kind of job opportunities there are out there. I think Greg and we talked about this last year when we were at STEM here, of letting people know, example here, Southwest Airlines is in New York City finally now. And so you can have a number of students actually go down to their centers here to talk to them, see what kind of opportunities they have here. What you have at NBC, where you can have people come to the various schools or having these kind of workshops to let students know what are the jobs that are out there, what kind of work that you can do so they can find an interest in these kind of things. Statistically, less than 1% of our black and brown kids make it to the NBA or the NFL or major leagues. So there's many opportunities for a lot of these corporations here to form these kind of workshop or apprenticeship programs, not only to get the kids into the high schools, but also start working in the junior high schools to let them know what other opportunities are there out there. And when you find out, as I say, when the kids go online to see these kind of events, they become excited. And again, we have to find ways to make these events exciting where kids want to go to and become involved in these kind of components to be productive citizens in our society.
Nice. Yeah, we had a career day in NBC where we brought in 100 students from Brooklyn schools, and we brought in a diverse panel of people behind the camera, in front of the camera, and just let them ask questions, because if you don't have anybody in your family that's ever done this kind of work, you have no touchstones. You have no, you don't know anybody who does it. How do you get there? It's a bridge that you really have to, we have to build. Jeff,
that's
the presentation. Oh, I'm sorry, Greg, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's the exposure piece that we're talking about, and I totally agree with Jeff on that. What is it? 57% of folks' learning style is hands-on, and so when they can't get that, you basically have just told half of the class, or whatever. And so, to me, you begin to look at those kind of forks in the road. And we started. This would have been our 5th year of a summer camp for employees' kids, and you had just mentioned it, where it was like, and it's because the kids only know what their mom and dad does, and that's not necessarily maybe what they want to do. So whether it's a flight attendant or ground mechanic, or they work at headquarters, and so it's fun to watch their eyes open up. But when they get this hands-on, when they get to go to, they're working on the dispatch exercise and moving the planes around, and it's just gigantic, complicated puzzle that is a blast to get to do, because you've got to move it around. And then when they leave and they look at, and you'll ask them, how was that? And they just kind of give you that look that like, that was math, but it was the coolest math I've ever done. They got to touch it, and that's just huge. And that's one of the pieces that we have to be able to fix when it comes to access and exposure, is allow folks to touch something so that they can fall in love with it and then pursue it.
I mean, I think it's 2 steps, right? They have to see it to be it. If you can't see it, you can't imagine being it, right? And then they have to understand that there's a path to get there. It's a hard path. I mean, let's not make the mistake that STEM is easy. It's not easy, but it can be the means to achieving a dream.
Absolutely.
So I think, really how do you get to the part where you say to them, it's tough, do it, but it's tough. How do you make sure that they know? Because so many kids drop out, and so many kids go to college and they drop out after 1 year. Chemistry is too much, physics is too much. How do you get through that piece of it? Sheryl?
In the case of the Philippines, a lot of college students are going into business courses, not much into sciences. When they're already in, chances are that they're going to complete their degree program. So it's really the pathway to university that's quite difficult. So convincing parents, for their kids to go into sciences and engineering and STEM courses. So last year we had a program involving parents. So we talked about the importance of pushing for STEM education. Why do we need to invest in STEM education? The need for more researchers that will determine, the competitiveness of a country. And it was a very good, we received a very good feedback with regards to that. And also we tried to talk to teachers. We had a teacher immersion program in one of the manufacturing plants of a Unilever Foundation. And just to make them see that there are STEM-related careers available in the country, and so they can talk about these things with their kids, so that the greater exposure that they have, then the more opportunity for them to choose a STEM career right here in the Philippines. So
that's great. Jeff, I want you to get to Jeff has a presentation, so
let's see if it
why
works.
don't we go to your presentation so that we don't miss it. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, hold on. Can everybody see that?
Not as full screen yet.
Is it on? Because I see it here.
It's small. Can you press, is there a full screen?
I have a full screen on mine. I don't know if Henry said it was fine before, so I apologize for that.
Is Henry still with us? Henry? Well,
Kelly?
you know what? Why don't you just walk us
Okay,
through
well,
the
I'll walk through. As I
slides?
say, we're basically
Yeah.
talking about STEM here, building an inclusive workforce. So, and again, I thank my son for helping me put this together. I use a letter S for what is our strategy, a plan of action designed to achieve a major or overall aim. It's critical that we have excellent leadership, accountability of all of our teachers and leaders, as well. Partnerships. Partnerships definitely include our parents. Also, partnerships is the private community. We just cannot depend solely on the funding from the city and state with all the budget problems they're having now, definitely with COVID. But we also have to form key partnerships as well, alliances to help us there. And then what are our goals and objectives of what we want to achieve and moving forward here? The next slide would be here, let me go back. T for teamwork, which is the combined action of a group, of people to achieve a common purpose or goal. The leader's role in developing and managing the team is critical to success, meaning the principal, the leader of the school, the superintendent of the respective districts must obviously work together. A willingness to work together to achieve a goal, meaning bringing all of our key constituents in here. Children, teachers must have a voice in terms of what is going on. How do they feel about STEM? How do they feel about working in a classroom environment? Also on the devices as well. But create a positive working environment for the team. With the question you asked before about failing, yes, some students might fail, but also let's look at the successes they will have. So that when kids do achieve a success, send a note home to the parent, letting them know, hey, wow, your child did fantastic work today. Letting that student know, hey, look, you're on the right track. And making sure there is a clear vision for the team. What is the team approach of how do we now achieve an overall success here? And then closing it here to the next slide, 1 second. And then the E, I'm sorry, here, 1 second. E, which is critical for us, is equity. The ownership of an asset of value. Many of our students do not have the devices in schools to work with. So what does that mean? In their minds, they have no value. In their parents' minds, they can't afford the value of buying a device. So if they go to a school, many of our schools in New York City and around the country, I'm sure, are using devices that are old and antiquated here. So we must make sure that the kids have the technology in terms of that they can use as well in school and at home, but also having access to the internet. Because what good is having the car without the keys? The quality of being fair or impartial, meaning that all students must be able to have success, regardless of race, color, or creed, or gender. And unfortunately, right now, there is very little equity in schools of color. Discriminations related to race, ethnicity, gender, and etc., they must stop. And again, the lower achievement gaps because of that, here not having that, again, if we do not find a way to give the students here the rightful place at the table, then we will still be talking about this situation for years to come. And in closing on this here, the M is mission. What is the mission here that we want to carry out for a specific goal? What is the long-term goal of what do you want to achieve? How many years do you think it will take you? But more importantly, what are your short-term goals to get there? And in closing, I also want to thank the districts 28, 29, and District 7, who we're now trying to form a collaborative partnership of working together to provide not only professional development for the teachers, but also for the parents. Because again, if we do not include parents in anything we do as we move forward, then we are not going to succeed.
Thank you. That was great. So let's talk about reactions to that. Some of the things Jeff talked about, I think, are really interesting and worth exploring. One is partnerships. How do the partnerships work between public and private enterprise to drive the goals? Greg?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think I will refer to it often as kind of dating a little bit, right? In that you have to have a mutual benefit for each other. It can't just be one way. And I think that that's where sometimes you see challenges with that is one side or the other gets a little upset because maybe a group, an organization might get frustrated because, we don't think they're the best fit for us or vice versa. And in some aspects, you've got to get over that. You've got to make sure that how and what you want to go do can be accomplished. I think one of the keys, and I think this is the time that we're in is really showing that is, I think sometimes on the educational side of things, you can, the duality, and I was listening to Dr. Pruitt beforehand is, where the conflict is, jobs are not bad, right? So your students going and being gainfully employed afterwards is not bad. And I think, sometimes we can get really hung up on the title or what they're pursuing and not realizing that somebody graduating high school and starting a career. I mean, I've got flight attendants, I've got mechanics, I've got people that are working in my operations that, have been here for 30 plus years, and they're going to retire as millionaires with a high school education. Okay. And have with amazing health benefits and flight benefits, and they're impacting their family because their kids and family have seen the world. They've been exposed to some things. They're going to schools. And I think sometimes we get so hung up on that particular piece that I think you have to have a mutual objective there. And so companies have to be better in working with the partners of really focusing a lot more on, here are the skills that we're looking for. Here are the things, here are the problems we're trying to solve. Versus I feel like there's a really, this is my job, like my whole thing. If I could predict what we were going to hire for in 5 years, like I would be labeled a genius and have them, but I can't do that. And I have inside knowledge. So I don't know why someone else who's not inside my organization can think that they can figure out what the jobs of the future are. So I just think there's just a lot of opportunity there, but it gets back to being very, very truthful and very, very honest, even back to what you said earlier on just the difficulty. And I think what gets missed to me on STEM is that the foundational piece of it to me is problem solving, critical thinking, perseverance, some of those things. And whatever title, like I'll take people with those skills all day. All day long, I will take them, and they will do very, very well here and a lot of other places. And so I think I think sometimes we have to make sure, to your point, does someone have to go be a chemist to be successful in STEM, or can the problem solving, analytical ability of chemistry combined with all these things actually make them successful? And I would tend to believe that. So.
Yeah. We did a collection of videos last year on engineers, women and minority people, less non-white people, basically, and how they got through a path of engineering. And it really was, the goal of it was to use engineering as a means to an end. It's not engineering in itself. It's not chemistry in itself. It's a path. But your dream can be realized through that path. And I think that's kind of the challenge here. Everybody was so exciting and compelling, and young kids have looked at those. And again, it was like, God, I never thought engineering could take me there. They never in a million years thought that. So I think it's all the right kind of thinking. You can't say, oh, chemistry's hard, do this, and maybe some good things will happen and you'll make a lot of money. I don't think that's it. I mean, I think especially for young women, you have to inspire them through their dreams. And it is around, and a lot of young women, they want to be caretakers. They want to be creative. They want to, work together. They want to collaborate. That's all. STEM can offer all of that, but they just don't know it.
Yeah, and I think, when you get into pursuing the college, right, we all know that I think you get sometimes so focused on the educational how complex that can be, which it is and hard, but then there's the financial impact. There's being away from, there's all of those things that kind of come into play, and you've got to be able to balance that. But I've got a group in revenue management, and they're like, we'll take every chemistry econ student combo that you can find, because they've come in and several of them have been, diverse in nature, and they're just, how they think and how they attack the problem is so different than somebody that maybe just went that normal business financy kind of route or whatever. So.
Yep. Sheryl, I see you nodding. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I agree. I completely agree with Greg, saying that a multidisciplinary approach to STEM, because the STEM discipline that you get, the kind of thinking that you bring in. So, for example, someone might be going to a business track, but because having a STEM background will really enrich the way that person will attack the problem. Like, for example, more analytical, more evidence based, more looking into different arguments and different perspectives. So these things are actually brought in by STEM training. So in the Philippines, the move right now is to STEMify technical vocational education and training. So we have work with ILO Philippines and the Technical Education Skills Development Authority, trying to introduce a STEM learning design framework in Tibet. So STEMifying Tibet is the next move for us here.
Jeff, do you have anything to add to this?
I think it's all great. I think we were listening to Dr. Pruitt earlier this morning, where one of the teachers wrote in, well, I'm just a regular teacher and I teach. How do I make it more comfortable for those teachers here? I think in terms of the professional development, we also have to find ways to make inclusive in the classroom, more diverse in terms of their teaching here. Make it fun and exciting, where they're not only teaching it once a week, but it must be taught every day, in terms, so it's a more of a stepladder building approach here to that. And how does that work in here? Well, again, the professional development, letting teachers know here, once in a while, let a child take over the class and work with them in terms of leading the class discussion, and see where it goes here. And so there's so many ways that we can find out, making it exciting here. Example, just using a Southwest. Many of our students have never been on a plane.
Right.
They think it just flies, but no, put them in a visual virtual cockpit so they can see all the instruments and how does it move? What do you have to do? All these step-by-step learning things where kids become excited now, and I want to. And that's what we want to hear from our kids, where I want to rather than I can't.
And Jeff, I think we were actually at the same breakfast table when we were last year as well. Right. And I think one of the things that we got to figure out a way to get back to is we got to let teachers teach. Right. I come from a state that we teach to a test, and you just spend the second half of each year just preparing kids to take a test. And it just is like, I mean, I remember sitting at that table and some of the teachers talking about how they used to use cooking to teach this and all these cool things. And I'm just like, yes, that's how they will fall in love with it. But when all you're doing is trying to ensure that they get a certain score on a test so that school can get funding or whatever, then we've lost at that point in time. And somehow we've got to figure out how do we get that back and let our teachers teach. I mean, when I talk to a teacher why did you go do that? That's what they wanted to go do, is they had a passion for that. And we've just, I think we need to cut them loose. So.
Yeah. I think what you're all getting at too is like bring the spark back, right?
Yeah. Right.
Like what happens in the classroom is a spark. And when did the spark leave science, right? I mean, shouldn't the spark really be in every classroom? And how do you bring that spark across all classrooms with STEM? I want to go back to COVID, because in a way, COVID has been a blessing for STEM, because it's really brought science to the forefront again, hasn't it? I mean, the epidemiologists, the science, the data. How has COVID really helped the cause of STEM education?
Wow, that's a great question, Soraya. I think the unknown has clearly been about this particular COVID. When it first came out, we were told that it's not that bad. So people here didn't necessarily have to walk around with masks. And then we're finding out here that there's so many differences with this particular virus and the previous viruses. And so that sparked an interest in kids because, again, when they hear the word virus, they think it just might be only one issue. Here, they're letting you know that because of this, so many different things can happen to you here. And so when they show you the visual, actually, of the genomes on TV, that sparks the interest for the children here of what is this here. And so many of them are now actually going online looking up, what does this mean here? What's going on in terms of this here? So that is at least enhancing the discussion here onto that. And I have to thank Dr. Sanjay Gupta because he is at least making it easy for children to understand what we're going through so they can follow through in terms of what you're talking about. Like Greg says, they're making it, even though it's a tragic situation, understandable of what we have to learn about. So now more kids are learning and reading about something that they had never even heard before. And so that leads them into the next step. Well, then if you have a problem, then what is the solution? And so now what is the solution? How do we get to a vaccine? And then now you have a lot of discussions of what can we do for a possible vaccine? Do you take it orally or is it an injection or a combination of both? So again, it's a step-by-step learning process that if taught properly, we can continue to keep on moving higher and higher for our kids and also the rest of the nation as well.
Well, in the world, right? I mean, I think that's the thing that's been, I think that's one of the things that is it's not one particular area. This isn't America's problem or the Philippines problem or whatever. It's a worldwide problem. And so, and then to me, the disciplines within science have been, it's like, you know, I'm like, what is that again? Like, what are they, like someone speaking on something and it's like, you got to Google it or research it to figure out, well, what is their specialty or whatever. And so I think that part's been, you know, incredibly eye-opening, but I think but I think also to, you know, a little bit what Jeff and I think what all of the STEM and what the integration of STEM does across the board is this is a gigantic problem.
Yeah.
And the problem isn't just the science problem. The problem is how do we keep safe, the social distancing, how do you open up schools or businesses or what is the math behind all of those things, right? That are, and it's just so on and so forth. And I think what it is showing when the problem solving of it works well, whether it's at a government level or an organizational level or school level, is how much collaboration is happening, right? Because if each group tries to do it in their silo, they're only looking at one piece of the problem, right? And so what's happening, right? You know, where's the big balances between science keeping someone safe and then the economy, right? But if someone won't look at that holistically and go, okay, let's prioritize both, and there's a balance, and how do we find the right answer? So that's just to me is the power of STEM, the power of especially of an integrative STEM is to have folks, to have students, to have teachers, to have everybody kind of coming out and going, I cannot solve problems in my own silo. I've got to reach across. I've got to share. I've got to use other sets of skills, whether I have them or someone else has them.
Can I answer? Right? Another good thing on TV is that you've seen many black and brown doctors, epidemiologists on TV and nurses, where a lot of our students might not have ever seen that many out there before. So I think that has also been a plus that on every night, just about every TV show or news fall, you will always see someone, whether it's a nurse, a doctor, a specialist of all the various components here of people who look like them. Now tackling this particular problem here. So it gives them a possibility, hey, well, I can find out about this as well. That we see people of our ilk doing something like this, of helping people around the world. So that's a positive out of a negative, which is see here.
Yeah.
Cheryl? I would like to add that I have similar thought pieces with Greg and Jeff, but I'd like to add the keyword innovation because we see here that we need to think of different ways to look at the opportunities behind the challenges of the pandemic. And in doing so, we're able to reimagine the way we do things, reimagine the way we teach, redesign programs, think of, reaching out to people despite the, the diversities and despite the different contexts that they have. So it really shows the the side of STEM that is transdisciplinary, meaning to say we build on each other's strengths and then put them together to craft those innovative solutions for our people, for example. So that's from my end.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, COVID has brought the world together, right? And the problem solving is really using STEM. I mean, if you think of the expertise, if we're going to conquer this, we couldn't do it without science. I think it's actually been, you know, a tragedy, as Jeff said, it's tragedy, but there is a silver lining here for STEM.
Yeah, and I would agree with Cheryl, and I think, you know, the innovation piece, and that's, you know, that's beyond, you know, that's just how even business is being done. So, you know, I just even look at, well, I mean, last year, you know, could imagine having, you know, coffee with Kelly and saying, hey, you ought to have a virtual conference instead, you know, or whatever, you know, and she would have, you know, I probably wouldn't have been on the invite list for this year or whatever. But yeah, how is, you know, you look at those pieces that are happening everywhere. And what I tell everybody, you know, all the time, it's just like, you know, when this is behind us or whatever, or we feel like it's close to being behind us, I don't know if things will be better or worse, but they will be different, right? And we know that, and how we'll do things will be different. And so, yeah, I think it just that, to me, once again, just the basis to me when I think of folks that are in STEM, it is a problem-solving mindset. It is a critical thinking, and that leads, and whether you're in that discipline, it's blended. It creates innovation, whatever it is. But I think that's why it's so powerful and why it's so important. So.
Okay, final thoughts. We're in the last 4 minutes. Jeff, final thoughts for the audience?
Well, I'd like to thank follow up with Greg, and also Sheryl said that we must learn to take positives out of negatives, that we always must believe here, and that we can succeed. And I'm not trying to brag on my son, but I'll use the 3 words that he used in his valedictorian speech: we don't give up. That no matter what the challenge that we face here as individuals, we are not alone. We have to work together, build partnerships, coalitions here, because again, our most precious commodity, our children, are the future here. And if we don't pave the way of us collaborating, then what example do we show for them? So as we continue to move forward here, all the great work of all these partnerships here, what is the plan now that we all coalesce here to bring together with all of our constituencies in your professional areas into education? How do we reach out to the teachers to give them a new voice? As Greg said, make teaching exciting here for them. Let's hear from them of their concerns. Let's hear from the parents, their concerns. They're having problems with remote learning as well. Many of them now love teachers where before they didn't know who a teacher was.
Yeah.
So they can't wait for them to come back. But as they do come back, let's work with them together.
I was just going to give Sheryl a final thought, Kelly.
Sorry.
Sheryl, go ahead.
In my case, thank you for this panel. I really enjoyed being part of this. For me, this is the best time to really push forward for innovation, which is basically the main idea, the main mindset fostered by STEM education. So we'll be able to overcome adversities if we really try to be more adventurous and be more reimaginative in terms of doing innovations for remote learning, for education in general. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the one thing I will chime in, I first want to thank you all. The audience would love, and Soraya, they're kind of looking at you and winking, going, wouldn't it be great if you guys created a PSA that NBC could run with all of you on it? And they said it was really, really powerful. So I want to thank you all for that, because it was terrific.
Thank you.
I thought it was terrific too. Really, really thoughtful.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn. Now you can get some rest.
I enjoyed the panel. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you. So with that, and our amazing panel that we had there, we now have a lunch break that's coming up. So I just want to encourage everyone to use this as an opportunity to visit the lounge, have a lunch, dinner break, meal break, wherever you are in the world, whatever time it is. And we are going to get started back here right at 12:30. We're going to play a couple of our videos that we have from our sponsors. And again, please check out their booths as well. You can click on to any of our sponsors or supporters, and you'll be able to get more information about these wonderful, amazing organizations. And we'll be back, and I look forward to joining everyone. And I hope to see some of you in the lounge. I've been popping in and out, and it's really nice to make new friends. So thank you.